Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is right now 2:28 p.m. East Coast time, Monday, September 16th. So the Monday Night Football game has not aired yet. Obviously, it's 2:28 on Monday. But I'm going to be taking a first look at Week 3 of the NFL season. Welcome aboard. We're going to look at it over on Draftkings. Take a look, see what we got. This is my first time looking at it, right? I can see the quarterbacks that I have not scrolled down, obviously, right now as I'm looking at this over my shoulder. But that's it. So welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, loads of people discovering this channel. It's very exciting, but there's a really good chance that sometime at the end of this week we'll hit 10,000, the big 5 digits on this channel. So thank you and subscribers. Thank you every single person for all the nice comments that everybody's been leaving and all the nice things over on Twitter people have been saying. I really appreciate the support this NFL season. Been grinding for 11 months and it's been a ton of fun. I do cover daily fantasy sports. My name is Sal Vetri. In the NFL, MLB, NBA, and WNBA streets. I have exclusive content over on Patreon down below. You can check that out. I have a Twitter at SalVetriDFS. Have some courses, an NFL daily fantasy course you can check out. All that stuff as well as some free strategy guides. They're linked up down below in the description. Lots of stuff. You can roam around, check it out now, check it out later, whatever you have to do. I appreciate it. If you get any value from this video or some of my other videos in the past or some of the ones maybe later this week, if you can hit the subscribe button, it helps me out a ton. Like I said, by the time you're watching this, we'll probably be at 9,000 subscribers. I'm projecting 10,000 by likely Sunday or right around there. So very exciting on my end. It's been a lot of hard work doing this full time now. So thank you all so much. Let's get into this first look. And what I'm going to do here is, look, it's Monday, right? We still don't have any injury reports on some players that got injured. I just got something on my phone that said James Conner, his knee injury is not supposed to be serious, but we're still waiting on stuff in terms of Big Ben's likely done for the year, so we got that. Literally probably no Drew Brees for a while. No Sam Darnold even tonight for a while, but we're still waiting on stuff like the Devin Singletary injury, what's going on with Dante Moncrief's finger, and lots of other players that I'm just not going to list, the 8 to 10 players we're still waiting on news for. I will do later in the week my picks video, probably tomorrow, my final thoughts video, which just had over 10,000 views. You guys ate that one up, so thank you, on Friday, as well as content every single day throughout the week here and over on Patreon. Be on Awesemo as well during the week. So going to build a first look lineup from sort of like a cash perspective, I guess you can say. I'm not trying to build a tournament lineup right now, but there'll be much more information on that later in the week. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Buckle up. Do what you have to do. Multitask if that's what you're doing right now on your phone texting. It's all good. I appreciate you being here. So let's take a look at the quarterbacks. Patty Mahomes, it's no surprise that he's the most expensive. It's no surprise when he goes for literally nothing in the first quarter and then lights it up with 4 touchdowns in the second quarter yesterday. I mean, the guy went absolutely nuclear, right? He just went nuclear. 35.62 fantasy points after starting off the first quarter with like a dud, finishing with 443 yards and 4 touchdowns. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter that there's no Tyreek Hill out there. It doesn't matter that Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy are splitting and they don't know who's going to get on the field. Like, he did it with DeMarcus Robinson. McCole Hardman, the rookie, stepped up. Should have had 2 touchdowns, had like a 72-yarder called back on a pretty bad penalty call, in my opinion. So, yeah, Patrick Mahomes, always in play. Not going to get to him this week. But here's the thing, actually. The Baltimore secondary might scare some people away. First off, Patrick Mahomes is matchup proof. Second off, I was preaching for people to play Christian Kirk and or Larry Fitzgerald last week because the Baltimore secondary, Jimmy Smith was out, Tavon Young was out, and Marlon Humphreys was going to be playing limited. So that's their top 3 cornerbacks. Yeah, I get it. Earl Thomas, the safety's back there. But we saw it last week. Kyler Murray went for 350 yards. If Kyler Murray and that offense that wants to throw the ball, obviously in the Cardinals, is going to go for 350 yards, don't you think Patrick Mahomes is going to do just fine, especially since I don't expect all 3 of those cornerbacks to be all back, 1 and 2 fully healthy? Should be better than expected for Patrick Mahomes, honestly, which is really tough to say. So Lamar Jackson hits the 7K range, just very, very good. You saw him do it this past week with his legs, 120 yards on the ground. He can do it either way that he wants. He gets a beneficial matchup here against the Chiefs, who their secondary actually, so far through 2 games, has not looked as bad as last year. Improvements have been made, but they've also faced Gardner Minshew and Derek Carr. So things can be said now that they're going to be facing Lamar Jackson, see what they can do with his versatility and his upside. Let's keep scrolling, right? And in terms of cash, I usually like to pay down in like the 5K range, honestly, if I can, for a quarterback, because the difference between the quarterback outcomes is not that wide outside of like an outlier like Patrick Mahomes, who you can feel pretty good about projecting him for the mid to high 20s in terms of a median projection. Everybody else you're going to hope to be projecting for around 20 fantasy points. And my projections are also on Patreon if you're interested. They come out mid to end of the work week. Dak Prescott, $6,500 against, this guy's just been balling. Have him in like every single season-long league. I'm very high on him with the Kellen Moore offense. Good things were being said. Now he gets Miami, who, it's going to be a huge spread. It's like minus 21.5. I've never seen anything like that before. He gets Miami now. He's just been absolutely insane. 25 of 32 week 1, 26 of 30 week 2. Completion percentage is just absolutely off the charts. He's just looked really, really good, and so is that whole entire offense. Michael Gallup dealing with a knee injury, another player that you have to keep an eye on. I don't like paying up for the 6K range in cash, but Dak Prescott's a spot where he's too cheap. Like, the guy's price point came up, $200 from last week? He should not be this cheap. Let's continue to look down. Jimmy G, I'm seeing him 6,200 above the Steelers. I get it. Last week, the Seahawks tore them up. Tom Brady and the Patriots tore them up week 1. Overall, the Steelers on offense and defense look to be in a lot of trouble through 2 games. Does not look like it's going to be a beneficial year now losing Big Ben. Maybe that's a good thing, though. I don't know. But yeah, Jimmy G, 6,200. He looked fine last week. Not sure I want to get there, but unlimited pass attempts, I think it was like 25. Jimmy G went for 297 and 3 touchdowns last week. That's insane. My man Josh Allen against Cincy is only 5,900 still at home. Let's plug that in right now and see what we can do. Josh Allen, I had him as my cash quarterback last week at 5,300, I believe it was, and he looked fine. Now he gets to go up against Cincy, who coming into last week was ranked 21st in pass DVOA, and they just got torn apart last week in limited pass attempts by Jimmy G. Josh Allen coming in, it's now 35 straight game. A Buffalo Bill has not had 300 passing yards, but it doesn't really matter for me. I don't need Josh Allen to go for the 300-yard bonus. It's very nice, right? But he had 250 yards in the last game. He has the rushing upside, 2 rushing touchdowns through 2 weeks, 1 in each of the weeks. He's a very red zone. He's a threat in the red zone to Frank Gore or Devin Singletary in the backfield. His rushing upside is so good. And yeah, it doesn't matter if he makes mistakes, right? We saw week 1 he had 4 turnovers. He still finishes with 19.96 points. Week 2 has no turnovers, finishes with 22. Look at that. 2s are wild right there. So this is a spot where he didn't really do much in the second half, and he still looked fine. So very good matchup against the Cincinnati secondary that they've improved in their rush defense a little bit so far since last year in a small 2-game sample, but the pass defense just still looks absolutely abysmal. Now we could look a little bit more at the cheaper quarterbacks. Jameis versus the Giants has just fallen apart. This is a change, right? This is a change already. I was going to put Josh Allen there, rushing upside. Look, Jameis, I get it. They don't like what they're seeing so far out of him, but the Giants have looked terrible. Their pass defense is bottom 5 in the league so far. Their pressure rate is bottom 5 in the league so far through 2 weeks. Now you're going to give a lot more time to Jameis, a guy who makes a lot of mistakes, especially when flustered. You're going to give him more time. So look at that. Just like that, we save $500 at the quarterback position. And Jameis Winston, sure, maybe you don't think he's a very cash-safe type play, but when his price point goes from now being in the mid to high 6s after week 1 and 2 to being in the low 5s, open to week 1 is at the mid to high 6s. Week 2 is on the showdown slate. To now being 5-4 against a Giants team that's not going to press you. They don't have much talent on the outsides. Janoris Jenkins is their best defensive player probably, and that's not that great. So that's a fantastic price point on Winston. I do think it's cash game viable as of right now. We could look around a little bit more. So right now that stands out in the 5K range for me is the fact that Jameis Winston is down there and the fact that you're getting Josh Allen still cheap. We could look at some of the fill-in quarterbacks, right? You have Mason Rudolph at 4,800 against San Fran. Probably not a cash type play for me. Where's Teddy Bridgewater at? Teddy Bridgewater is at 4,700 against the Seattle Seahawks. Probably not a cash game play for me. So let's move over to the running back position and see what we got. Oh, yes, please. Christian McCaffrey's $8,700. Look, I get it. Cam looks terrible. I get it. This offense looks terrible. There's a really good chance we're all overreacting through 2 weeks. I've watched the games. Cam has looked absolutely atrocious, but there's no reason his whole entire career is just going to go down the toilet in 2 weeks of the NFL season. How many times does players that suck in the first quarter of the season turn it around and have a good year? I mean, literally Aaron Rodgers, like the last 3 seasons, it seems like that. And also Christian McCaffrey is going to be a guy who relies more on short passing. Cam is inaccurate downfield right now. Maybe there are shoulder issues. I don't think there are. I think there's just a lot of bad playing right now through 2 weeks to start the season after not having much going on in the preseason after injuring his ankle. So Christian McCaffrey, though, against this Arizona defense that, 1, looks atrocious, 2, is going to run a lot of plays, so there's going to be a lot more plays for the Carolina Panthers. I'd project like an extra 8 plays on offense, 6 to 8 plays on offense for the Panthers. You would expect that Christian McCaffrey touches the ball on like 2 to 3 of those. So if you're giving me a bump to the normal touches for Christian McCaffrey of like 2 to 3, yeah, give me that all day at 8,700. Cheaper than Zeke, cheaper than Barkley. Here's the deal. Barkley I really like as well. Like fitting 2 of these stud running backs in, right? Even Kamara now running through Teddy Bridgewater and or Taysom Hill, depending on how that game goes, is a little bit worrisome for cash. McCaffrey, though, I'm fine with. I'm not going to let a stinker from last week really affect me moving forward, especially in such a good matchup. Zeke in a fantastic matchup, 21.5 favorite against Miami. He had 25 touches on 75% of the snaps last week. I'm not too worried about him getting pulled at halftime like people are saying. Maybe he gets pulled in the fourth quarter, but if they're up like 38 to 18 or not 18, 38 to like 3 against Miami, I don't think you're too worried about Zeke not getting there. There's a really good chance Zeke has 100 yards and a touchdown or two if his team's dropping 38 points in 3 quarters, right? So I feel fine about that. Getting to Saquon at 9,100, I also feel fine about. The guys just matchup independent. 2 100-yard rushing games through 2 weeks, and games where his team just trailed by a lot, right? They've lost by double-digit touchdowns in each of the first 2 weeks, and he still is very, very effective on his attempts, right? 18 for 107, 11 for 120. He's been relatively active in the receiving game. The targets are there. It's just a matter of converting on them. That's a big issue for Eli, right? Not so much Saquon. So, yeah, you just see the upside here. The floor is just there for a guy like Saquon Barkley. He's going to get every single touch. So, yeah, squeezing 2 of these guys in is very attractive to me. Maybe we do that, right? Maybe we get into squeezing 2 of these guys in. And what time does Carolina and Arizona play? Because if it's going to be in the afternoon, Carolina, Arizona is not in the afternoon. Oh, yeah, it is. So right now for Carolina, Arizona, they play at 4:05. I'm going to put Christian McCaffrey in my flex. And why am I doing this? Well, if indeed I need to switch out my cash game lineups, he plays in the 4 o'clock slate. I could switch to something else if I have to get a little bit more risky, right? If I think a lot of my opponents have McCaffrey and I'm losing, well, then I'm definitely going to lose if I'm already losing and he's our last guy each. If I think a lot of my opponents have him and I'm losing, then I'm going to be switching to somebody else there who maybe is not as highly owned, but it's better than just taking the L, right? So that's the reason to put him in your flex if he plays at 4. So, more running backs. I want to get Ekeler in my lineup. So, Austin Ekeler, and if he plays at 425, we got to put him in the flex. He plays at 425. So, yeah, we got to put him in the flex. Just regardless, it's not that big of a deal, but we'll do this right now. Ekeler will go into our flex. But I want to get Austin Ekeler into my lineup, and as long as Austin Ekeler is going to be the starting running back for this team, he's going to remain in my lineups, and his price point is too cheap, right? 7,200, the price point comes up for sure, right? It's a little bit of a tougher matchup versus Houston, but I'm not even concerned. Like, as long as Melvin Gordon holds out, and he said that they're not going to trade him, he already knows that, so he's just going to hold out till week 8 to try and hurt his team. I'll tell you one thing. Melvin Gordon being out is helping the Chargers, in my opinion, right? I think that Ekeler is a much more versatile back. He's definitely the better pass catcher. He's been fine when running the ball, right? I mean, 17 for 66 against Detroit. That's not on him. That's a very good stout Detroit defensive line. Mike Daniels there, a very good run stopper. D tackle that they picked up from the Packers. They have Snacks Harrison right there as well. So this is a very good line overall. It's going to cause a lot of running backs problems. And he still caught 6 balls on 6 targets, 67 yards in the air. He had a long touchdown called back as well in this game. He's just been absolutely dynamite, and 7,200 is not a fair enough price point. We saw Dalvin Cook at this price point last week, but you're also getting him now at home, and he has much more pass-catching upside than Dalvin Cook. 7,200 is too cheap. I like the fact that we saw his rushing attempts go up in this game. I like the fact that now he saw 23 total touches last game. He saw 17 or 18 in each of the last 4 games before that with no Gordon, so them feeding him the ball more just shows that there's more confidence in him. Justin Jackson's still touching the ball. I think he had 8 overall touches, 7 on the ground and 1 in the air last week. Nowhere near the 23 that you're getting out of Austin Ekeler. So at $7,200, I really don't care the matchup, to be completely honest with you, that he's going to have to go up against. Leonard Fournette did not do well last week against the Texans. Leonard Fournette, for the most part, usually averages like 3 yards per carry, so I don't care too much about that. Week 1, the Saints ran very good against the Texans. It's too small of a sample size for me to really weight it. The Saints usually have a very good rushing offense. They have some pretty good schemes. And Leonard Fournette last week was pretty much average Leonard Fournette at 3 yards per carry, especially with a quarterback, Gardner Minshew, monitoring that offense. So give me Austin Ekeler playing at 425. We put him in the flex. Before I pick my next running back, and I get it, like Aaron Jones right now looks good at 6,100, right? David Johnson dealing with a wrist injury. We have to see how that goes. Le'Veon Bell, we'll see how he looks on Monday Night Football. If he looks very, very good and like dominant, like he did week 1, playing 100% of the snaps, we'll see now with this shoulder injury. $7,000 is going to be too cheap. Dalvin Cook, rightfully so, comes back up in price point. Dalvin Cook is going to be an elite running back this year. He might touch the mid 8K range, honestly, and he's already skyrocketing up the boards. Who else do we have? Marlon Mack against Atlanta. Wow, 5,800. Let's put that in there and see what we could do. I would like to get to another top-tier running back like a Zeke or a Saquon. But if we don't have to force it, we don't have to force it, right? Ekeler, I feel really good about an 18 to 20 touch workload there. And honestly, his floor might be 4 catches. McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey in a pace-up game against a very weak defense. Give me that. And Marlon Mack against the Falcons at home. He's a home favorite right now against Atlanta. That's how worrisome Atlanta has looked early on this year. Matt Ryan, like 5 picks already, I think it is. Insane. So Marlon Mack at home. He got involved in the pass-catching game a little bit last week. I think he had 3 targets, which was good to see. 3 down work was happening for Marlon Mack. And he got 20 more touches last week. 19 touches on the ground week 1, 20 last week. Now he's in a very favorable spot against Atlanta. Let's throw Marlon Mack in there. I don't even really need to look at the rest of the running backs because I feel good about that. Mark Engram on the road against Kansas City as an underdog, no real interest. Kerryon Johnson, 4 running backs had at least 2 carries in that. There was 24 total touches in the backfield 4 running backs had carries for Detroit last week. Kerryon Johnson only got half of them. I don't know what the hell is going on in Matt Patricia's head and that offensive coordinator head, but they're all a bunch of donkeys out there, to be honest with you. Damian Williams is questionable. Keep an eye on that. LaShawn McCoy is also questionable. Keep an eye on that stuff. Mostert, so 3 running backs for the San Francisco 49ers had 10-plus touches. Mostert had 10-plus. Matt Breida looked very good with 10-plus. Jeff Wilson had 2 touchdowns. Didn't look as dominant with his touches, but he was using the red zone and around the goal line. So that's a very just disgusting thing to try and work through, right? They were all, in terms of Mostert and Breida, very effective. So for a cash lineup, no shot I go there. Josh Jacobs on the road, I believe, is an underdog. No interest there. We saw him not really be using the passing game at all last week in a game where they trailed by a bunch, and that was the concern that I had, right? All he did last week, and it's not up yet, but he rushed the ball 12 times for 99 yards, didn't have a single reception. That was the concern I had with him in tournaments last week. So that's why I feel pretty good about that, right? I feel pretty good. Devin Singletary is still too cheap in my opinion, but he's dealing with an injury, not going to have enough touches for cash. Wow, these prices are just ridiculous. Holy cow. So this is my first time looking at this, right? These guys are just all mispriced. And I get it. Look how many dominant receivers there are right now. Hopkins, Adams, Cooper has looked very good. 2 touchdowns in 2 weeks. Michael Thomas is going to be a bit of a question mark with Teddy Bridgewater. Should still see a lot of targets, but not as much upside for cash. Julio Jones just having one of the more dominating performances that we've seen out of him in a little while. Over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Antonio Brown seems to be fed. Led the team in 8 targets last week. Tyreek Hill is going to be out. Keenan out. Okay. Why is Keenan Allen 7,000? Why did his price come down? What? Yo, I don't know if DraftKings is like everybody else for the last 2 years has been like worried or skeptical about drafting Keenan Allen in season long or playing him because he's injury prone. It's some sort of anchor in people's mind. That's always the comment I hear when it comes to drafting him in season long and drafting him in games. It's just like, I don't know. He's Keenan Allen, injury, blah, blah. Like, this guy is dominant. 15 targets, I believe it was last week. 15 targets in a week where just going to get thrown to all the time, right? We talked about Austin Ekeler. Playing him and Keenan Allen in cash is fine. It would have worked out for you fine last week, right? 18 points out of Allen, 17.8. His price point comes down $600. Am I missing something? Is Keenan Allen going to be playing with one arm this week? Like, what's going on? Even then, I have some interest. 8 of 15. Like, I don't even know, guys. This is insane. Like, he got targeted in the end zone, double team. Phillip Rivers threw the interception to end that one. But the offense is funneled through Keenan Allen and Austin Ekeler, right? They combined last week for 21 targets. I believe it was 58% of Phillip Rivers passing attempts to those two guys. And they have to do that. Like, Mike Williams had a big play, caught a couple balls on 5 targets last week in a limited role. That's fine. He's going to get his 4 targets a game or whatever. But Keenan Allen's always going to be pushing for double-digit targets. I projected him both weeks for at least 10 targets. And Austin Ekeler is going to be there as well. They're going to funnel to short, quick passes because their offensive line is terrible. So Keenan Allen, $7,000. That's like an automatic put that in my lineup right now. So let me quickly get a defense to see what we're realistically working with because we're already going down in salary. And that's concerning me because we're getting a lot of expensive guys, right? Ekeler is expensive. Allen's expensive. So let's see if there's any home favorites. The Chargers against Houston. Are the Chargers home this week? Let's see what they got here on the Action Network. We're looking at the Vegas lines. Are the Chargers home this week? That is the question. Let's find them quickly. I'll type in the Chargers. Should have just done this from the get-go. Chargers are 3-point favorites. So home favorites is something that I like to target in fantasy to try and find a cheap, quick defense. So let's just put the Chargers in there right now, right? It's not the greatest of matchups going up against Deshaun Watson, and we know what they can do. Very good cornerbacks for the Chargers. And I will say, Deshaun Watson's already been hit like a league high, sacked the league high this year. He's going to just, if he wasn't mobile, he'd be getting sacked like 8 times per game. This offensive line is terrible. I would not be shocked in like 2 years if you see, I would be kind of shocked, but if you see something like Andrew Luck, Deshaun Watson saying like he's just being beaten up too much because this man is not getting protected at all. And it's very lazy on the part of the coaching and the organization around the Texans. So we have $4,400 about to spend on our last 2 wide receivers and a tight end. Let's see what we could put in a tight end, see if there's anything that stands out. Kelsey, obviously, if you want to get to him, is always fine. Earl Thomas out there in the middle of the field, secondary as a safety, is a little bit challenging, but Kelsey we know is fine, but $7,100 I usually don't like paying for. I usually like to find value. Mark Andrews at $4,600. I continue to say that this guy's not playing enough snaps, but when he's on the field, he runs her out and he just gets the ball thrown to him. So he's been very elite, right? He's been very, very good. 8 catches in the first 2 weeks. The first week, his touchdown came from Robert Griffin III, but still, nonetheless, he's looked very dominant. Last week was wide open on a touchdown catch. But anyways, Evan Engram at $5,200, way too cheap against Tampa Bay in my opinion. Vance McDonald at $4,300. We saw Vance McDonald get peppered with targets from Mason Rudolph. Both touchdown receptions came from Mason Rudolph. The problem is only 5.4 was his average, right, in terms of just receptions. He caught all 7 of his targets. Nothing really down the field. He'll be a pretty good red zone target, which is okay. Darren Waller, once again, led his team in this week in receiving yards at 63, had 7 targets, 6 catches. He looks pretty good. He looks like he's going to take over through 2 weeks now, living up to the hype. And he has an okay matchup against Minnesota, not the greatest on the road. Just looking at the cheap end, wow, O.J. Howard has just crashed, right? O.J. Howard at $3,800 now. Did nothing last week, just absolute goose eggs. This is a problem in O.J. Howard. But I think it's a prove-it week for him. I think that against this secondary, it is getting overblown about how bad he's been. But in cash, I really don't know if I want to go there. Austin Hooper's been pretty good, guys. I mean, $3,600 week one. He looked fantastic, caught all 9 of his targets. He's just been a guy who, last year he averaged like 5.5 targets per game and an 80% catch rate. So he was getting about 4 catches per game. Had 4 catches last week. For $3,600 for cash, that's a pretty good price point. I'll see if I need to squeeze in another wide receiver because he's a nice price point. But Darren Waller again stands out. Vance McDonald stands out. I'm going to put in Evan Engram and see what we can do here. And this is why. Evan Engram, if you watch this game, was not running deep down the field, and the wide receivers out there for the Giants are just terrible. But 6 catches on 8 targets, finishes with 48 yards, and only 10.8 fantasy points. It's not going to ever get much worse than this game, and he still had 6 catches on 8 targets, right? 10.8 points. Cody Lattimore is now out. They just keep losing wide receivers out there. We'll see if Sterling Shepard comes out of the concussion protocol. They're still going to be without Golden Tate. They likely will be without Cody Lattimore. It's not going to get much worse for Evan Engram. His price doesn't change. Eli was awful last week, just absolutely putrid, like 5 yards per attempt, just disgusting. And he still scores 10.8 fantasy points. Like, this guy has a seriously good floor around 10 points. And we know his upside from week one is like 30. So Evan Engram at 5,200 looks decent. Now the problem is, can we afford other guys, right? Like, I'm looking at the wide receiver position. Godwin is way too cheap still at 6,900. I don't get that. Sammy Watkins against a banged-up Baltimore secondary. That looks pretty good after not doing much last week. Maybe people low own him or go lower on him in tournaments. Mike Evans looks cheap. Tyler Boyd's price doesn't change. I get it against Buffalo this week. Might be a little bit challenging. But this guy saw 12 targets last week. He's going to be fantastic in this Zach Taylor offense, playing the Robert Woods role, it seems. That price I love on Tyler Boyd. The price point doesn't change. He went for 10 catches for 122 yards on 12 targets last week. That's just absolutely ridiculous. So let's keep scrolling, see if we see anything on the cheap end because we're going to need something cheap with only $4,100 left. Tyrell Williams' price point comes up to 56. John Brown at 55 has not come up enough, in my opinion. That's way too cheap for John Brown against the Cincinnati defense. John Brown is a legitimate target for Josh Allen. He's not just running deep routes. He was running short slants. He caught 7 catches on 8 targets, I believe it was, for 72 yards, and he was running slants. A lot of short catches for like 8 to 9 yards, which you like to see out of a wide receiver, especially for a cash format. John Brown looks legit out there right now. Wow, John Ross only 51. Larry Fitzgerald only 51 is very cheap. Hardman's price at 5,000 doesn't come up. Yeah, there's a lot of mispricing at the wide receiver position. Christian Kirk only 5,000 after being peppered with targets each of the first 2 weeks, 12 and 8 in an offense that ran 4 wide, way more than anybody else in the league. Kirk's not going to come off the field this year, it seems. Curtis Samuel, 4,800 price against Arizona is not coming up too much. I don't know if I want him and McCaffrey though. Okay, so we have to start making some decisions here if we want to go down at tight end to finish out this lineup because I really don't want to be digging down here at wide receiver, right? The $3,000 range is disgusting. We need to get at least to the 5K range, if not higher. So let's go down at wide receiver. Let's just throw this in here, or tight end. I mean, let's throw this in here to save $1,600. Right now we're up to $4,900. Let's see what this looks like overall. Let's see if we can build out a lineup with this with Austin Hooper at 36 and see at $4,900 now we could fill out our last 2 wide receiver spots. So let's see if we can get a cheapie and then a main guy. Because the 5K range is stacked right now. I mean, you have Ridley, who's been playing extremely well. You have Ross, who's been playing extremely well. Hardman, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk. All these guys I would like to get to. It's a matter of can we get there. Emmanuel Sanders at 4,800 has looked insane the first 2 weeks. How is this guy doing this off an Achilles tear? 5 for 786. Like, this guy's looked very, very good. If you saw the end of this game, it was very fluky how Denver tied the game and almost beat the Bears. They went for the 2-point conversion, almost beat them with 30 seconds left. Mitch had a pretty good drive, found Allen Robinson. The end of this game was insane. Look up the end of this game and see what happens. Denver was going to kick a field goal. There was a penalty. They had like 3 tries at it. At 4,800, Emmanuel Sanders seems pretty good, right? I mean, look at this. What you want here is 8 to 10 targets in cash. You got 7 and you got 13. He's averaging 10 targets through the first 2 weeks. That's not bad. Now we get $5,000 to spend on our last spot. McCole Hardman stands out as the rookie out there. Looked very good week 1. Had 6 targets. This Baltimore Orioles, I'm still in the baseball mode. This Baltimore defense, if their cornerbacks are out once again, and Jimmy Smith and Tavon Young, I don't know how long Young's out for. It seems like Jimmy Smith. Seems like both of them are going to be out a while. Then fire up Hardman again for potentially another 6 to probably more targets. But I want to see if we can try and get more targets out of here. DK Metcalf is too cheap at 4,700. If indeed you're going to have an injury come up for Gallup, getting to Randall Cobb seems okay. All right, so we're too low here. I'm trying to see what else we can do here. I like Marlon Mack. I like Austin Eckler's price point. I like staying at McCaffrey if possible instead of coming down to somebody else. Jameis is already cheap. Keenan Allen, I think we can probably not come down from. I like that. It's just a matter now of fitting somebody in at $5,000. And I mean, I'm honestly kind of fine going to Christian Kirk. $5,000 from Kirk. The guy's been getting targets, right? I want 8 to 10 targets in my lineup for cash, 12 and 8, 10, or 12 and 8, so he's seen 10 a week. He's looked very good. He was tackled on the 1 yard line twice. Both weeks. Week 1, he was tackled on the 1 yard line. Just missed a touchdown. And then week 2, he was tackled on the 1 yard line. Just missed a touchdown. Like, just missing touchdowns here. Week 2 last week, literally tackled on the inch line. Very sad time. But he's still going to get targets. He looks dominating out there. He's getting a matchup against Carolina where likely he's going to be in the slot a lot, so he'll be able to avoid Bradbury on the outside. Again, so in this range right here, if we could have got up to Larry Fitz in cash, Larry Fitz might make more sense than Kirk. I like Kirk has sort of a floor and a ceiling to him. And then if you want to go to McCole Hardman at the same exact price point, I think it's fine. I like Hardman a lot more later in the week if indeed these secondary players, all the D-backs and the cornerbacks, that is, are out for Baltimore. Hardman in that Kansas City offense, which is implied for, I imagine, just a ton of points as always. Let's just see what they're implied for. Can't even spell right now. And is it not going to come up for me? Kansas City's playing who this week? The Ravens? Let's just do that. Ravens. So Kansas City it's a 52 over under. We don't have the team total on this site. So yeah, you can get to Kirk, you can get to whoever you want there in terms of him or Hardman. But this is it. I think Jameis bounces back at 5,400 against a very bad pressure team. You can say what you want, but he's too cheap. He's no longer GPP play. Like, he's still GPP play, but this isn't like as much of a risk at 5,400. I think the upside's there for a guy who we're expecting this year to do big things. This is going to be one of the better matchups. McCaffrey, say what you want. He's going to be fantastic in cash each and every week. He grades out to do well. Marlon Mack against Atlanta is too cheap, especially as a home favorite. Austin Ekeler at home as a favorite against Houston. Way too cheap, in my opinion. Austin Hooper, a guy who's going to probably still see as a tight end. If you get me 6 to 8 targets, I like that. And 6 is probably this guy's floor in this offense, especially around the red zone. He's increasing his role a lot. Emmanuel Sanders, 20 targets through 2 weeks. Christian Kirk, 20 targets through 2 weeks. You have to like that. 25 targets through 2 weeks for Keenan Allen. This man's price point should be $8,000, folks, over at DraftKings. You're messing up here. I'm telling you. The Chargers at home as a favorite. They're a cheap defense that I like. I like targeting home favorites, especially with how bad the Houston Texans offensive line is. So that's it. That's the first look lineup. We're getting it out early on Monday. This will be out probably later in the day. Tonight, hit the like button when you see this. Hit the subscribe button if you watched all the way. Who do you have in your first look lineup? Who do you think I got totally wrong? I don't know. Who do you think I got right? Let's be positive in the comments. If you're being negative, I'm just going to block you. You know what I mean? So I appreciate it. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.
Hey, hold up. 1 second. Check out this page. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button, all right? And if you're interested in Patreon, if you're not already a Patreon, you can hit that button on Patreon, become a Patreon. It will take you right there. You can also check me out on Twitter at SalVetri.DFS. And hey, if you're interested, this next video that's about to pop up, why don't you check it out as well. See ya.